morning, Tasha. How are you?
I'm fighting a battle against my kitten, my cat. She
Uh,
literally, she's worse than God. She takes the food out of my mouth. I raised a monster. But besides that, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
yeah, I'm doing okay. It's just hot here in the bowels of hell, as you can see.
Oh, well, I'm
It's,
trying
it's
to.
not it's not easy doing the devil's work.
I'm,
It's like,
I'm doing my best to recreate it. I've got the heater on, and I'm still cold. So, good for you.
yeah, amazing. Um, so, you know, Tasha, I've always been fascinated by the power dynamics of large groups, especially if there is a multiplicity of opinion within society. I'm doing my best not to say the obvious, but you understand exactly what I mean. So when there is a society and there's a couple of different flavors or movements or opinions or schools of thought within that society, there's always a power. There seems to be this power play at work, and that fascinates me. How in this modern day and age that we're living in, when we recognize that humanist principles, live and let live, other people are just as valid as we are. It's not the Middle Ages where we can go and plunder and steal and burn and rape and pillage whatever we want to. We still find ourselves in this mindset, and I think it's an evolutionary remnant where we want to conquer and collect resources just to ensure our own survival. And especially when it comes to religion, that is very, very prominent. And especially with Christians, there seems to be this point of view where they are just out to conquer and make sure that the entire planet, they want this, homogenous society where all the principles that Gene Roddenberry explained to us in Star Trek, where live long and prosper, and everybody's part of one big universe. That goes out the window, because if you're not like them, I think it shows some kind, it stirs some kind of insecurity within them. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I firstly want to say I'm always careful of saying them because we all have us and them mentalities.
I know,
Yes,
I know.
it's Lilith and the Pope of atheism. But the thing is, what religion does is it reinforces something that
Yeah,
is innately part of our human evolutionary history, like you explained. So us and them, and to think in terms of us and them, it comes so naturally to us. It's what we do, and it's something that we actually have to work against because it does not work in our favor in a global and a collective society. So when one's survival depends on groups of 200 or 500 people having a very stable connection of relationships, and the group's survival depends on who you let in, who you let out, and how you let them in or out, then it makes absolute sense to have that very strong focus on in, out, us, them. But we live in a collectivist society where it's not necessary for us to fight like that anymore. I mean, just modern technology has overtaken our primitive evolutionary brains.
yeah,
And the problem with religion is that religion reinforces all the worst aspects of all the worst effects of our innate us and them thinking. And that's why I think it's dangerous, because it doesn't leave space for recognizing that our evolutionary instincts have been overtaken by our technological advances, and we don't need to have us and them ideas anymore, except when we play rugby. But form of religion
okay.
than
Oh yeah.
religion.
Sorry, you cut out for a second after
Yes,
rugby.
After rugby. As rugby is a much more, or sport with all its denominations is a much better form of religion, because at least you don't have to kill the other one. You just have to beat them at kicking a ball or hitting a ball or something like that, and afterwards you can actually have a party.
Exactly. But is it? I want to get your opinion on this. Is religion the primed petri dish of culture that the virus of violence just germinates in and spreads very well? What is it about religion that generates these extremists? Okay, I mean, granted, it's a vast generalization because you do find extremists in every single aspect of life. I mean, there are people that are very extremist about their exercise routine, for example.
Yes, but they don't kill other people for it. That's the difference.
So you think it's all about consequences? It's the consequences of the I can say the extremism.
Yes, because I mean, you don't need to. I can be an extreme sports fanatic, but the chances of me killing somebody for it are extremely small, because I'm not being called upon by some external entity, be that Allah or God or Buddha. And I think that's the problem with religion. The problem with religion is that we've created, as a species, these external enforcers, or these external doing what they are telling us to do, what God is telling me to do. But there's no way of getting God, who's giving the message, to be held accountable. And I think that's the trouble with religion. If I, for example, there's that lady from, was it that Celia Stein, who did those murders in, was it Vereniging or somewhere, or even Donald Trump, who basically wanted to overthrow the American government. So he can be called to account.
Right.
Those who want to follow him, they can follow him, but then those who are the victims of what his followers are doing can say, Donald Trump told us to do this, and then we can actually keep Donald Trump accountable. But in the case of religion, this entity held to account, and that's the trouble. And I think that's why it's so easy for religions to create dangerous extremists, because ultimately you can't hold the religious extremist to account, because he's just doing what his God is telling him to do.
Exactly.
And that's the danger. It's not so much the action, but the actions or the consequences of the actions, in my opinion, definitely come into it. Because, I mean, like I said, the sport fanatic doesn't burst into my house and put a gun to my head and say, you shall run with me this morning.
Yeah. You have to cheer for my team or else.
Exactly.
Insane. So I thought, let's just do a little bit of light reading. And while we do that, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there's a banner. If you want to join in the conversation, simply go to tiny.cc/f/f. You do have to have a webcam. It's not negotiable. So if you're going to talk smack, we want to look you in the eye when you talk smack to us. So, let's have a bit of a quick read. So this article is on our atheists.co.za blog. So how to recognize and counter Christian extremism in your community. So Christian extremism is a growing problem in many countries around the world. It is a form of religious extremism that is based on a fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible, and it is characterized by a rigid adherence to certain beliefs and practices. While it is important to recognize and counter Christian extremism in your community, it can be difficult to do so without a clear understanding of what it is and how it manifests itself. So this article will provide an overview of Christian extremism and offer some practical steps for recognizing and countering it in your community. First, it is important to understand the core beliefs of Christian extremism. Generally speaking, Christian extremists believe that the Bible is the literal word of God and should be followed without question. So I'm going to pause here just to say it's always very striking to me, like you mentioned earlier, Tasha, how it is always men speaking on behalf of God. We never hear from God what His intention or His plan or His purpose is for the world. It's always men speaking on behalf of their God,
saying what God told them to do.
Exactly. It's like a game of spiritual telephone.
Absolutely.
It's like my God told my prophet, who told his wife, who told his it's crazy. So they always tend to view other religions as inferior, or may even advocate for violence against those who do not share their beliefs. Additionally, Christian extremists often reject modern science and technology, believing that they are contrary to the will of God. So once you have a better understanding of the beliefs of Christian extremism, you can begin to recognize it in your community. Look for signs of intolerance and hatred towards other religions, or those who do not share the same beliefs, or those who do not have any beliefs, I might add. Additionally, look for signs of violence or threats of violence against those who do not share the same beliefs. Once you have identified Christian extremism in your community, it is important to take steps to counter it. One of the most effective ways to do this is to engage in dialogue with those who hold extremist beliefs. This can be done through open and honest conversations about the beliefs of Christian extremism and how they may be harmful to the community. Additionally, it's important to provide resources and support for those who might be affected by Christian extremism. This could include providing counseling services, support groups, or other resources to help those who may be struggling with the effects of Christian extremism. Now, when we say Christian extremism, people always have this vision in their head of, people with, explosive vests strapped to themselves, standing in the middle of a crowded square, or people, we have a very, and I can say one of the other kids on the playground has recently influenced us internationally to have a different kind of view about extremism. But when I talk about extremism, I mean something, it might be something benign as, denying someone reproductive health care based on your religion, or denying somebody the right to love and be with someone that they want to and that they are biologically attracted to because of your religion. I'm of the opinion always that it's a, when you say my religion does not allow this, you are not allowed to do it. That's where I draw the line. It's because I don't have to live my life based on your fucking religion. Excuse my French.
So basically what you're saying is that you define religious extremism as any example where any person enforces their religious belief onto another person, and that enforcement can be by even just something as benign as sanctioning that person, in terms of if you think of the wedding cake case that we had in South Africa, or the wedding venue case. I think it was a wedding venue where this venue said, no, sorry, you can't
You can't
have your
have your
wedding.
lesbian wedding at our Christian.
Can't have your lesbian wedding here. Yes, and I've never thought about that so deeply. I've never thought about defining religious extremism.
It's an imposition. When it becomes an imposition, I think
an imposition on another person. I'll have to think about that a little bit more deeply, but I am inclined.
Because ultimately, the view is the view is extreme. The view is extreme. It's extremist in the way that it enforces itself. You know, when it's like you said, when I define extremism, it's taking something to an extreme, to an nth degree, that is beyond the scope of what normally happens within that scale of reference that we have. Because everybody has a scale from 1 to 100, and there is a specific point where it's a very subjective interpretation, but there's a specific point where you say, fuck, this is a little bit extreme now. Like now we are, for some people it's at 50 out of 100. For some people it's at 70 out of 100. Some people are very lenient and they say, okay, my cutoff point is 90%, and that's when it becomes extreme. The thing is, you've heard that expression, when you give somebody the hand, they will end up with your arm. They'll end up taking your arm.
I'm a teacher. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah. So to carry on with this, finally, it's important to take a stand against Christian extremism in your community. And this could include speaking out against it in public forums, writing letters to local newspaper, or even organizing protests or rallies against it. By taking a stand against Christian extremism, you can help create a more tolerant and inclusive community, which is ultimately what the extremist is against. It's not, it's not the live and let live approach. It is the conform or be excluded approach. And when you come to a society that has many different people of various different flavors, you cannot be conform or exclude in your viewpoint, because ultimately you're going to end up lonely by yourself. History has proven this over and over again. Christian extremism is a growing problem in many countries around the world, and it's important to recognize and counter it in your community in order to generate a more tolerant and inclusive environment. By understanding the core beliefs and recognizing them and taking steps to counter it, you can help to create a more peaceful and accepting environment for all. And now we're getting to your department, the role of education in battling Christian extremism. Right.
Well, I think firstly, I will definitely. You've prompted me to do some more thinking about my view of what religious extremism is, because I must confess that I had the image in my head of the zealots and the people who walk around with guns and not guns, bombs strapped to their vests. But if you think about it, for example, certain denominations,
young earth creationists are considered extremists.
Yes, because they're on the extreme end of the spectrum.
They're on the extreme end of the, they're not within the gray zone.
Within the mainstream, even within Christianity. So even within Christianity, they are seen as on the far end of the spectrum. And if one thinks about, so certain denominations, I think, can by default be seen as extreme. For example, the Jehovah's Witnesses, who won't allow blood transfusions. In that respect, I suspect the Gereformeerde Kerk that I used to belong to can also be seen as on the edge, towards the edge of the spectrum, because women are not allowed to hold any positions of authority in that church. Still to this day, I mean, women can't be elders. they can work at the church bazaar to bake cakes and do things like that.
It's so misogynistic. That whole branch is just one big stewing pot of unholy misogyny stew.
Yes, it's true, and I never thought so myself when I was a member of that branch. I never thought that it was true, but it seems it was. I have to acknowledge the fact that, yep, it is what it is. But okay, so education obviously plays a very important role, because firstly, we need to educate people about what extremism is. And extremism, in any point of view, is probably not healthy, because, you know, in Afrikaans we have the saying, my mom used to say, niks wat dit te vooraan het is goed nie, behalwe tevrede. So, and in English, that's nice, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So for our English listeners, tevrede means to be content, and it's spelled te, but the prefix te in Afrikaans refers to too much. It's too much of something. So too much of, there's nothing that too much of it is good. You know, too much exercise is not good. And I think to educate people about the idea of keeping an open mind, because if you have an open mind, then it's very difficult to become an extremist, because an extremist by default has to commit to very strongly to one line of thought. And
but this
that's the first thing.
This is a very interesting point that you're making, Tasha, because you know, this article also highlights the point of education. And the thing is, we as human beings, unless you are a psychopath, have an innate tendency towards empathy for our fellow human beings. If I see another human being suffering, I intrinsically know what it feels like to suffer myself. So I am, you know, less likely to try to inflict more suffering, and even to try and alleviate the suffering of another person.
I'm sorry, but I have to disabuse you of your idea there. It's actually well, in the sense that it's not exactly true that we are empathetic towards people of our in-group.
Yeah.
And social science has shown this. So social psychology experiments has actually shown that it's not only psychopaths who enjoy it when other people suffer. I mean, when last did you watch a rugby match? And when last did you watch the spectators in that rugby match?
It's true. You know? It's true. I love watching religious debates and seeing them flounder. I relish.
Exactly. So at least, but the thing is, if the moment one can acknowledge that in oneself, that you don't have to say it's only psychopaths who don't want to see people suffer. We all want to see the outgroup suffer. Maybe not by burning in hell, or maybe, but we don't have so much of a problem with that.
That's an extreme. This just points how extremist the religion is. You know, behave. There's not the punishment is disproportional to the perceived crime.
Yep. Even that is extreme, eh? Even the so yeah, but the role that education plays obviously is to teach moderation in everything. And I don't know if you've listened or watched any of my podcasts with the guys from Australia and Belgium, the Machalis podcast. but we did a whole thing on.
I did one. It's I don't follow it on there's not a platform specifically that I regularly use that I follow on that, but I did listen to the one that you sent through. Yeah.
Yeah, and if one of the values of the Stoics and is moderation, because whether you drink too much, whether you eat too much, whether you sleep too much, moderation in everything is probably the best idea. And
I want extreme moderation.
Well, is that an oxymoron? Extreme moderation. I love that. But listen, if I have to choose for something to be extreme, then extreme moderation is absolutely the best way to go.
Right, but let me continue. Let's actually go through this part about education, because it makes perfect sense when you think of it in terms of having more information at your disposal will enlighten you as to the plight and the influences that other people will have on you as well, because religion tends to be a little bubble that isolates people into an us and them group, like we mentioned earlier. So it reads, Christian extremism is a growing problem in many parts of the world. It's a form of extremism that's based, did I already read that? I think I'm repeating myself here. There you go, next paragraph, there we go. Education is an important tool for combating Christian extremism. Education can help to promote understanding and tolerance of different beliefs and cultures. It can also provide an opportunity for people excuse me, to learn about the history and beliefs of other religions and to help develop an appreciation for the diversity of religious beliefs, which includes non-belief. Education can also help to counter the spread of extremist ideologies by providing accurate information about different religions and people. It can help to dispel myths and misconceptions that can lead to extremism. Education can also provide an opportunity for people to learn about the dangers of extremism and to develop critical thinking skills that can help them to identify and reject these kind of extremist ideologies. Education can also help to create an environment in which people are more likely to reject extremist ideologies. By providing an opportunity for people to learn about different cultures and beliefs, it can help to create a more tolerant and accepting society. This can help to reduce the appeal of extremist ideologies and to create an environment in which people are more likely to reject them. Finally, education can help to promote dialogue and understanding between different religious groups. By providing an opportunity for people to learn about different beliefs and cultures, it can help to create an environment where people are more likely to engage in constructive dialogue. I fucking love that word, constructive dialogue, not beheadings and terrorist bombings, like.
Yep.
And work together to find common ground. This can help to reduce the appeal of extremist ideologies and to create an environment where people are more likely to reject them.
Being an educator, it's fantastic that I've actually seen firsthand how teaching children about the cultures of others causes them to be more tolerant and less extreme. And even if they weren't extreme in their views necessarily, we have a multiracial little tutor group that I run, and we did a thing where we had everybody talk about their ancestors and where they were from and where they were born and where their omas and opas and grandparents and great-grandparents came from. And the kids, there's no problem. There's never been a problem with racism or anything like that. But when the different children told the family stories, and the non-white child told his story, and the white child had epiphany, because I don't think he ever realized what it was like to live under apartheid.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And you know what was amazing to see, as when the non-white child had finished his grandmother's story, the two boys made eye contact with one another, and they actually showed I don't remember the exact sign, but they sort of said, I see you, I acknowledge you, and you've it was you know what the kids do, this funny thing, it's this funny handshake thing, and there was a new empathy between them, and there was a new understanding, because they'd learned about the other's life, and so I've seen it firsthand in a small group how it works, you know, and the impact it has.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I heard it said, I don't remember who said it or where I picked it up, but the fact that racism is something that is taught. It is not something that is inherent in human beings. You can take young children of different ethnicities, put them together, they instantly recognize one another. They play without any sense of these invisible constructs that we create to divide and separate ourselves with. It's a learned behavior, and it's very, very telling that you know, when you reflect on that, you say to yourself, like, everything that you know, all these principles and ideologies and things that we hold so dearly, that we cling to, we hug them to our chests, you know, in fond adoration. These are learned behaviors and things that that can change at the drop of a hat. You know, so I think it's very important to, you know, have a keen sense of skepticism, and, you know, never to lose that sense of inquiry and investigation, especially when you introspect. When you introspect, you know, to ask yourself those tough questions, like, why do I hold this belief? Why is this so important to me? Why don't I like that person's views? You know, these are the important questions that we need to think about.
Yep. Yeah. And to realize it's not a sin to change your mind about something. You can
Exactly.
you know, you don't have to stick to it. Once you've made minds have been made to change, you can begin liking somebody, and then if they do things that are not nice, it's, you know, then stop liking them. You don't have to like them because you like them initially, and vice versa. You can begin by not liking somebody, and then end up by realizing, you know, maybe they're not so bad. Minds are made to be changed. That's the one thing I'd like to teach children.
Yeah. Exactly. And the thing is, it's a sign of personal growth. Yeah, it's only in adulthood that I realized, you know, when I'm wrong and I change my mind and I adopt something new, that's actually a sign of personal growth. It's something that should be celebrated. It's not something that you could, you know, sit there in a corner and cringe and cry and oh, this is stupid, you know, like, it's it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have your beliefs and your ideas challenged and to change your mind.
And a living thing that doesn't change is probably dead.
Yeah. That's an oxymoron.
Well,
a living thing that doesn't change.
I mean, think of anything that's alive. Think of plants. Think of animals. Think of humans. A human that doesn't change. I mean, just physically, a plant. If a tree doesn't lose some of its leaves or grow new leaves in a new season, doesn't get taller, if it stays exactly the same, then it's dead. It's because growth, change is growth. Growth is change. And we need to foster that idea that you have to change your mind regularly, often.
Exactly. Celebrate it, to
Yes.
celebrate it. And but again, I think it's part of our evolutionary heritage that change is something that we instantly kick up against. We don't want change because that means something is going to. Is that you? I think it might be me. Just give me a.
I don't know. I don't think it's me.
Give me a second. I just want to double check. I think it might be my meter here. Just give me a second. I'll be right back.
All right.
You.
Shall I? Okay, so he just leaves me, and I have to, you see, that is now change. Never be too comfortable where you are, because things can change at any moment. A button can go off, and the host of the show can leave you all by yourself, having to talk to yourself on a screen. And you just have to adapt to that and just take it in your stride and forgive him for doing that to you,
Evolution by means of natural selection. You were naturally selected now to evolve your comfort level. No, so it's my electricity meter that when it runs to a certain level, it starts beeping to remind me to give more money to Eskom.
Do you have money for Eskom?
Yeah, of course.
Good. Good.
I don't have a choice in the matter. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, so I think in closing, let's just wrap it up on the double-edged sword of social media, information, and connectivity, because it truly is a double-edged sword. On the one side of the blade, it gives people access to information and community and connections, but on the other side of the sword, it does create a breeding ground and creates connections that would normally not have been made. And it's basically like the catalyst. It serves as a catalyst for everything. It catalyzes bad ideas and it also catalyzes good ideas. And so let me just read through this. The rise of social media has had a profound a profound impact on the spread of Christian extremism. In recent years, extremist Christian groups have used social media to spread their messages and recruit new members. I mean, we've seen this in our own local group, where we have new members join that were part of some international community of religious fruitcake. Sorry, I'm saying this in jest. I'm not meaning to denigrate anybody by calling them fruitcakes. It's the most apt comparison that I can think of. There's definitely some fruitcake in there. So this has allowed them to reach a much wider audience than ever before and has enabled them to spread their message of intolerance and hatred to a much larger group of people. Social media has allowed extremist Christian groups to spread their message in a variety of ways. They post videos, articles, creates content that promotes their views, and they also use social media to organize events and rallies that also spread their message to a much larger audience. Additionally, they can use social media to target specific groups of people as young people and also to spread a message to those who may be more vulnerable to hearing that message. The spread of extremist Christian messages on social media has had a number of negative consequences. It's led to an increase in hate speech and violence against minorities, and it has also led to an increase in disinformation against those who do not share the same beliefs. It's also led to an increase in the number of people who are joining extremist Christian groups, which can lead to further violence and intolerance. In order to combat the spread of extremist Christian messages on social media, it's important for governments and other organizations to take action. I don't know how I feel about that, because the thing is, I'm a free speech absolutist. You know, I believe that you should have the right to say whatever you like, as long as you, I don't know, you know, like even.
I have a possible solution to that, and it's actually from a TED talk that I recently listened to about the threat of civil war in the United States. I'll send the link. It's a very recent TED talk that was it was done in April of this year, and the speaker is a political analyst, and what she said was the first sensible thing that I've heard about social media and the spread of any form of extremism. She said the trouble is not that the social media platforms allow the free speech. That's not the trouble. The trouble is that they allow the algorithm to determine what one sees. So what we need to agitate for is that there's more of a random distribution in what that there's not an algorithm that feeds one based on what one searched. That there's sort of a randomness built into the algorithm, because in that way, it will hopefully, if it can be done, and this is a computer science topic, so I should be allowed to spew my hate speech, but there shouldn't be an algorithm that allows my hate speech to become the top of everybody's feed.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So if I, for example, go and I like your hate speech video, then the next video I'm going to see is also going to be another person doing
That's it. That's it. Yes.
So it's trying to level, but ultimately that's what makes social media. You know, it's going to defang it in a very, very big way, because.
But isn't that what should be done?
I don't know whether it's still going to. I mean, the algorithm is what makes what holds your attention, and if something doesn't hold your attention,
but that shouldn't be it. That's the problem. You should be put in a position where you have to do the work.
But you are thinking of this from the framework of someone who's actually interested in searching and looking for information and navigating down different paths and tracks to find information. And unfortunately, that's not what 90% of the planet is like.
But that's exactly why we need to cultivate the 90% who's not like that to become more like that. Because that's
you want to make everybody go cold turkey of social media.
Well, it's a better way of doing it like that than to enforce that's a better way than to use sanctions on free speech.
Yeah, you're right. But you know, Tasha, in a certain sense, you know, you and I both grew up in an era pre-internet. You know, so we know exactly what it's like. So if you want to find something out, to actively go and seek that information out, you know, you had to make the effort, go to a library, reference it, search for it, read volumes and volumes of work before you actually stumble across something that is valuable and interesting to you. That's
what made us the intelligent people we are today. That's why we are able to talk about things, and that's why we were able to free ourselves from the web of religion. That's exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is, you know, this, but the solution that you're proposing is a regression.
Why? Why do you say it's a regression?
Because it's, look, you're never going to wean people off the easy access that they have to information.
No, it's not the easy access that we need to wean people off. People don't even know that they're being fed by the algorithms. We need to get the algorithm to stop feeding people.
Yeah.
So it's not the access to the information. And I don't want to go back to a space where we have to.
But you are basically heading there is an implication of totalitarianism in that, because who decides what the algorithm feeds to you?
Well, then if you're saying that there shouldn't be an algorithm that feeds you anything.
But then
The algorithm itself is a form of totalitarianism, because it feeds you what it knows you want.
it feeds you what it knows you're going to click on so that it can sell more advertisements.
Exactly. How is that not totalitarian?
It is, actually. You have a very valid point.
Yeah.
Touche.
Dean, I need to give you my husband's number, and I need to give you my two boys in particular. I need to give you their phone numbers, and then I need to give you my mom's phone number.
Right.
Because my mom will tell you that when I was about 4 years old, my grandfather, who's been deceased for about 20 years, we went somewhere with them, and we were driving in the car. I think I was younger than 3. I was about 4. I was about 3. And my grandfather said that I'm a ship's lawyer. He used to call me ship's lawyer, skeepsprokureur. That's so they will tell you that, like Bolelang says, the purpose is to get you addicted. And why do they want you addicted? They want you addicted because they make money out of it, and that is totalitarianism. The churches want you addicted, and social media is a fantastic tool, but it's almost as if social media is akin to so let's say, so I have 3 kids. It's akin to me deciding who their playmates are. So I go into their class at school. There are 30 kids in their class, and I look at them, and I look at their parents, and I look at what cars they drive, and I decide, all right, my kids will play with these and these and these kids. And they never get any exposure to any other kid, because I decided that I think that they will like these kids and they will prefer to play with these kids. And because they mix only with a certain group of kids, that's what they get used to, and they come to believe that that is what the world looks like.
I'm reminded of that Grace Jones song, "Slave to the Rhythm," but I'm going to call it "Slave to the Algorithm." You must do a remix of that. Slave to the algorithm.
Well, it is. It is. And remember now, we know that we don't feel comfortable with opinions that don't match what we believe, that don't match our worldview. So the algorithm just reinforces what we feel comfortable with. And so we need to regulate social media in that way, by recognizing every now and again, just throw something in. So I sometimes, so I get these weird ads, these weird ads about, the listen to the Bible reading app, and Bible meditation, and Kasamba psychic reading apps. And I actually make a point of watching the whole ad, and sometimes actually clicking on the link to visit the advertiser, just to throw the algorithm out completely, so they have no idea what to do with me. I get the weirdest shit, because you see, there's Bolelang says it so nicely. As a child, I could associate with whoever I wanted, as long as they were JW.
Such freedom.
Yeah,
freedom is a very precious thing. We take it for granted sometimes, especially, I think we only recognize the intrinsic value of freedom and why we should fight to preserve it once we are deprived of it. As soon as you lose freedom, then you instantly recognize the value that it holds for you. So cherish your freedom to speak your mind, cherish your freedom to have divergent ideas from the mainstream, because it's a freedom that is not universal. There are places in this world where you do not have the freedom to even think something different. And I mean, that's at the core of religion, is like, don't you dare think about sin or doing something that you're not, or believing something else. Don't you dare, because you will burn and choke and scream and cry.
The algorithm will see to that.
I think personally that social media is going to be the death of religion, to be very honest with you. Sure, Christians implement it to a certain degree to spread their garbage all over the show, and just simp for Jesus every opportunity they get.
Why do you think so, Dean? Why do you think so?
Because of the proliferation of information and divergent ideas that you find on social media. I mean, as soon as you recognize that, you are in I call it a rabbit trail, like when you search for something, it'll suggest something related and relevant to you. So when you recognize that you're in that rabbit trail, to actually just start afresh. So as soon as you recognize that, you should be in good form.
But don't you think that Christians will, due to the effect of the algorithm, not be exposed to different ideas? They will become more and more insular, and that will lead to more and more fervent religious belief, and don't you think it will have the opposite effect?
I'm an optimist, Tasha. I might be foolish and naive in my optimism, but I am of the opinion that if you present people with enough information that is clear and relevant to them, they are, 60% of the planet, or at least have the emotional and intellectual integrity to recognize that they're wrong and to admit it. I mean, I've seen it with a lot of, maybe my sample size is too small that I'm basing my opinion on, but I don't know. I've had good experiences where people have changed their minds in discussion, and as soon as you give them new information, it's all about what people have ingested, processed, digested, and thrown out.
The best, I'm less optimistic. I don't think that religion will go away anytime soon. I think
pessimism becomes cynicism, though, please.
No, I'm not cynical. The best I think we can hope for is to have constructive conversations where we don't burst into violence. The best we can hope for is, in my opinion, moderation. I have not but maybe I'm just bad at convincing people. Maybe it's me. Yeah. Maybe it's just because
you see, I'm sorry to interrupt you mid-sentence, but before I forget to say this, I have to, right? What this proliferation of technology is doing is it is dehumanizing personal interactions, because we feel so connected and we feel so part of the whole conversation and of everybody's opinion, when in fact you haven't spoken to another person for 48, 96 hours. You've just been looking at a monitor and you feel so connected. So it's an illusion, it's illusory. Do not be fooled in thinking that you are so connected and on top of all the information, and so like part of the human race, when you've been sitting there staring at a monitor.
That's absolutely true, and so I can attest to that, because it was so nice. Some time ago we met you in Blouberg and we had a real lunch and we had real coffee and real wine, and
and it's important. exactly. And when I think when I think back of it, like it was such an enriching experience, interaction and talking, and nothing will substitute real human interaction, which is something that I think technology, in a certain sense, it really makes our lives easier. It gives us access to so much information, but it has the danger of replacing human interaction. It really does.
Dean, that's why I want to arrange an event in Cape Town where we have speakers, and that's what we met about. And you spoke to Llewellyn earlier. Sorry, this is a bit off topic, but well, maybe not. We need to have atheist gatherings where we get together so that the religious extremists can be reminded that we are there, we are alive, we are flesh,
Yeah.
flesh and bone. We
The thing is,
are real.
Natasha, we did start our branches, and then the pandemic hit, and then we had to cancel all of that, and it was gaining momentum, and I was getting into the habit of going for brunch, and it became a nice gezellige little get together, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, God sent an angel and put a stop to all of
It was a trumpet that was blown. There was a trumpet that was blown. That was it. Well, Elang will be able to tell you all about it. There was this trumpet.
The seventh trumpet of the eighth angel in the ninth revelation.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah. But in
That
any
one.
case, we as a community, we need to support one another when we see these kind of things. And if anybody who watches us after the fact recognize some of these occurrences of Christian extremism and religious imposition within your communities, please feel free to reach out to us. We might not be able to put a stop to it, but we might be able to get some resources, and you'll be able to have a look at some of those resources, get more information, get more educated, get more active. And Tasha especially is very familiar with religious imposition in education. So if you experience any kind of indoctrination or forced religious studies or anything like that in your personal life, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear about it, maybe give you some extra resources, or
And my dream in that regard would be to get a learner, a parent, an educator who is willing to actually stand up and say, I'm taking you to court because this is an infringement of my rights. And to stand up, and because regrettably that's what's going to be needed. And fighting any form of extremism does sometimes require a little bit of backbone. I know with religion in schools it's very difficult because it's kids, and I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for people not wanting to go that route. But sometimes the only way you have to sometimes fight fire with fire. It's not my preferred method, but because it feels a little bit extreme. But sometimes one has to be extreme to fight the extremists.
Fire with fire,
yeah. I just want to say one thing before we go. We've spoken mainly about Christian extremism, but I was shocked the other night to see how the Muslim political party in South Africa is growing and gaining traction. So we need to keep an eye out for that. So my fellow atheists, maybe we have a greater threat than the ANC or the EFF on the horizon. Those who see those organizations as a threat. I don't want to talk politics, but
can you imagine all our beautiful African women wrapped up in these fucking cloaks?
I told you in a
our
private
beautiful,
chat,
curvaceous African women who walked around with basically, just a loin covering, exposing their skin to the African sun. And can you imagine? And that will be a fucking imposition. That will be an imposition to have.
You obviously, just speaking from a male perspective, I have to just tell you that your show.
I mean, they don't treat the men any different,
You can't deny who you are, what you are. But I just want to say that I've had many a day where a burqa did not seem like a bad idea. Some day, when your hair just won't go where you want it to go, and you just feel like shit, and you know that the makeup's not going to make any difference, then a burqa is perhaps not. But I'd like to have a choice in when and where to. But what worries me is, where will I find a male chaperone to go with me wherever I want to go? Can you imagine living like that?
No. It's extreme. That is the worst kind of extremism that you can find within religion, because they don't play. They don't fuck around. It's and that is where the issue and the problem lies, is when there is an unquestionable authority. It's any authority needs to be questioned.
And lastly,
Love agrees with me. I mean,
I just want to say, finally, I need to warn. It's a note of warning, because I'm not as optimistic as Dean is. It took the far right Christian fundamentalists in the United States, it took them 40 years to get Roe v. Wade overturned.
Yeah.
When in the 60s or 70s, nobody imagined that Roe v. Wade would be overturned ever. And look where we are today.
Yeah.
So if you think, oh no, there's no chance of having a Muslim political party in South Africa, we already have a Christian one. And can you imagine the Muslims and the Christians banding together for a time to get a foothold and then maybe taking over? Can you imagine that? So don't be complacent, and also don't just think of the next 10 years. Think of the next 40 years, the next 50 years, because trust me, 50 years passes in the blink of an eye.
I know. In fact, I'm turning 50 next year. Can you fucking believe it, Tasha?
I turned 50 this year.
I'm not far behind.
50. One day you're not 50, and the next day you're 50.
That's half a century. And I mean, if I reflect on my life, what's changed? We went from, I was 17 years old when apartheid was pushed out. 17. So and it feels like yesterday, but we've come like 3 decades since. 3+ decades since, and it's incredible, when you think about how much has changed in just the space of half a lifetime. That's being optimistic as well.
Yes. Listen, Dean, let's not go there now. We've that's extreme. That is extreme. Let's just not go there.
Amazing. Tasha, again, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I always appreciate your contribution. You always make a lot of sense, and you are extremely generous with your time. Thank you so much for joining us. The hunt for the missing God continues. We'll be here every Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. We invite you, our Christian viewers, if you are atheist and you have Christian friends who you would like to put to the test, or if you know anybody that might find interest in these conversations, we encourage you to invite them. We will be here. We will be talking about religion, as we always do, and religion's imposition on society. We welcome you to join us. The link, as always, will be at the bottom of the screen. You simply click on it and you'll be live. We do require you to put your webcam on simply for the reason that we're not going to have some teenage trolls spewing profanities and getting our stream taken down, or some religious whack job coming in and threatening people. If you have the courage of your convictions, be prepared to show your face so that we can hold you accountable. And we will see you all next weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Be productive. Be happy. And we'll see you next time. And remember as well, if you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing. So please go and sin.
Go ahead. Bye, Dean. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tasha.